All right, we're going to do a few videos on fractions. We're going to start just with a review of what fractions are, when do we use them, and how to simplify them. And then in later videos, you'll see how to add, subtract, multiply, divide, and a couple of other topics. So let's go ahead and start. So you may be familiar with the pie chart drawing, but cut into different sections to represent a fraction. That's easy to see what a fraction looks like with that image you see there. So what is a fraction? The fraction is usually, it's just the part over the whole. So the whole amount of things is going to be your bottom number, which is your denominator. So in my 3/5, the bottom number is 5, that's your denominator. And then if I only want to talk about 3 of those items, so let's say maybe I have 5 little red dots down here, and I want to group the first 3 and show that as a fraction. Well, the whole amount of items that I have, how many dots I have is 5, how many pieces would be 5, so there's my denominator. And then my numerator would be just that specific group I'm talking about, so that would be 3. So in the circles here you see like 1/2, because I'm only using half of it's colored in. I have 1/3, 1/4, etc. So that's a visual way to look at a fraction. So when we talk about fractions, we talk a lot about pizza, because you can divide pizza into different pieces, assuming that you're making them all the same size. So some ideas for using real life fractions: if you take an apple and maybe you cut the apple up into 10 equal pieces and you only eat 3, so that'd be 3/10 of the apple. Or like here you have pizza. Like I said, it's a common fraction problem is the pizza problem. You could also think about coins and money. So if I have 4 quarters, that is $1 in American money. And if I only have 2 of those quarters, that's half of $1. So you're using fractions in that. You also tend to use fractions a lot with cooking or baking, or maybe you have a recipe that you need to half the recipe. You don't need as much, or maybe you need double. You got to double everything. It's another form of working with fractions. One other thing you need to be able to do, at least at the beginning of learning with fractions, is how to simplify a fraction, because a fraction could be written in multiple forms. So you need to find the number that both the numerator and the denominator have in common, and then you cancel out that number. You might not be able to simplify a fraction, and that's totally fine. You would just leave it as whatever it is, and that would be your answer. So here, like I have 2/4. Another way to think of this is, well, on top I have, that's just 2 times 1. I don't have any other factors there. And on the bottom, 4 is the same thing as 2 times 2. Well, if you notice, this first group of 2's, I'm essentially dividing this 2/2. I don't need it. They're going to cancel out. So really, 2/4, so 2/4 is the same thing as 1/2. So that would be the most simplified version. So we call that reducing fractions or simplifying. So the most simplified version of your fraction is 1/2. When you're using this, if you're using this in a class, sometimes teachers will count off if you don't simplify your fraction. So just be careful when you're doing that. Ask them, see what they want. I would want you to simplify your fractions as a teacher. That's what I tell my students. So you have 6/20, and I've got more for you to do on the next screen. So we'll do these together. So let's see, 6/20. You may not need to write out the factors. I will, just so you can see it. So I've got, oh, there we go. Oops, sorry. We have 2 times 3 over, let's see, 20 is the same thing as 2 times 10. And you can try different factors if you see, well, nothing's canceling out. You kind of play around with it, figure it out. I know these two, the 2 2's are going to cancel out. So I'm left with 3/10. And 3 and 10, they don't have any factors in common to cancel out, so I'm done. I don't have to cancel anything else out. 15 and 35. Well, let's see. 15 and 35, they both end in a 5, which means they both have a 5 in common. So 15 is 5 times 3 over 35 is 5 times 7. So I can cancel out those 5's. And that equals 3/7. Excuse me. And that would be your final reduced simplified fraction. Nothing else to do with those. Nothing else to cancel out. All right. So go ahead and pause the video and try to simplify these on your own. Get them as simple as possible. You may be able to simplify them a few times depending on what you take out first. So please try to pause the video, pause it, and try these out. And I will go ahead and start solving them now, simplifying them now. All right, 21 and 42, those both have a 7 in common. So again, you may be able to jump to the answer. You may not have to write this part. That's okay. So notice when I take the 7 out, I cancel out the 7, I have 3 and 6. If that was your final answer, it's not simplified all the way. Uh-oh. Here's why. The 6 has a 3 in it. So it's 3 times 1 over 3 times 2. Oops, that's okay. So I just keep simplifying as much as I possibly can. Keep going. And in the end, I should get to 1/2. It may take you 1 step to get to a half. It might take you 2, like it took me 2. That's totally fine. As long as I get to a half as the final answer, I'm good to go. If you did it in 1 step, then you would have taken out a 21. So that would have been 21 times 1 over 21 times 2, because that's what 42 is. 21s cancel out and you're left with that 1/2. So again, multiple paths to get here. Just get there. So it's okay. 12 and 48. Again, a couple of ways you could get there too. You could take out a 3. You could take out a 4. Or you could go ahead and take out a 12. So that's going to be 12 times 1 over 12 times 4. And our final answer, whichever way you went to get there, should be 1 over 4, 1/4. Okay. And then 25 over 60, well, let's see. Got a 5 and a 0, so let's take out a 5, see what happens. 5 times 5 over 60 is 5 times 12. Important to know your times tables here, especially if you don't have a calculator. Then you've got 5s that you can cancel out, and you're left with 5 over 12. And that's how you would simplify your fractions by hand. All right, that is it for this video. We'll get into some adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and all that other fun stuff in the next one. See ya.